At 74, Miss Ivy Clark knew her grandson, Andre, needed more than wealth to find true happiness. He needed love. To uncover who in his life truly saw him for who he was, not what he had, she devised a bold plan. Disguise herself as a humble janitor at the Clark firm and find the one who could change his life forever. Miss Ivy Clark, the formidable yet beloved matriarch of the Clark family, could not let life slip by unnoticed. At 74, she was as sharp as ever, and her time spent recovering at her countryside villa had only sharpened her instincts about her family's future. Overlooking her sprawling garden, with its colorful array of hibiscus and bougainvillea, she decided it was time for her grandson, Andre Clark, to settle down. Andre, for all his brilliance and charm, was a riddle even to Ivy. Tall, handsome, and effortlessly charismatic, he had built a reputation as the future of the Clark legal empire. Yet, to Ivy's dismay, he lived a life devoid of emotional depth. Despite being surrounded by admirers and sycophants, Andre seemed uninterested in love, or worse, mistrustful of it. Ivy worried that the people in his orbit valued his wealth more than his heart. She frowned, sipping her tea thoughtfully. Andre needs a partner who sees the man, not the money, she murmured to herself. But how could she find such a person in a world where everyone knew the name Clark? Then it came to her, a bold and unconventional plan. To truly understand the people in Andre's life, she would have to blend in. She would become Auntie Ivy, a humble janitor at the Clark firm. With the help of her loyal assistant, Mr. Douglas, she pieced together her disguise, a simple floral dress, worn shoes, and an old scarf to hide her meticulously styled silver hair. "You'll get caught, Miss Ivy," Mr. Douglas said with a chuckle as he handed her the broom she requested. "Nonsense," Ivy replied, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I've got the acting skills of Cicely Tyson and the patience of a saint. Let's see who these people really are." When she walked into the Clark firm's sleek modern office the next morning, no one batted an eye. The receptionist gave her a curt nod, the lawyers passed her by without acknowledgement, and the interns scurried around, too busy to notice her presence. Ivy smiled to herself. This was exactly what she wanted. Among the buzzing activity of the office, Shanice Reed stood out, not for her appearance, but for her unwavering determination. The young lawyer from Montego Bay had risen from humble beginnings, her path paved with grit and endless nights of study. Her colleagues often whispered about her background, mocking her thrift store wardrobe and rural accent, but Shanice had learned to tune them out. On this particular afternoon, Shanice was in the break room, reviewing a contract while sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee. Nearby, a group of employees huddled together, their laughter grating on her nerves. They were mocking someone, but it wasn't until Shanice glanced up that she realized who their target was. Auntie Ivy, the janitor. "Look at those shoes," one of the women sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "Did she dig them out of a dumpster?" "Maybe she's auditioning for a vintage fashion show," another quipped, drawing more laughter. Shanice's jaw tightened. She closed her file and stood up, her voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "You all should be ashamed of yourselves," she said firmly. "She's working hard, just like the rest of us. If you don't have anything kind to say, keep your mouths shut." The group fell silent, some avoiding Shanice's gaze while others scowled at her. Ivy, who had been mopping the floor nearby, looked up in surprise. For a moment she said nothing, simply observing the young woman who had come to her defense. Later that evening, as Ivy tidied the break room, she smiled to herself. "This one," she thought, "has a good heart. Let's see how deep it goes." While Miss Ivy quietly observed the Clark firm from her janitor's cart, her grandson Andre was conducting his own covert operation. At Ivy's urging, Andre had agreed to pose as Dre, a humble intern. It had taken some convincing. Andre wasn't thrilled at the idea of hiding his identity, but Ivy's reasoning had been sound. You've lived your whole life being treated differently because of your name, she had told him. If you want to understand this business and the people in it, you need to see things from the ground up. So there he was, Dre, the intern. Wearing simple khakis and a button-up shirt, Andre slipped into the office unnoticed. At first, he found it awkward to be on the receiving end of curt orders and dismissive glances, but as the days went on, he began to appreciate the perspective it gave him. One morning, Ivy introduced Dre to Shanice. "This is Dre, a new intern," she said, her voice kind but firm. "I'd like you to show him the ropes." Shanice, though busy, smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Welcome to the Clark firm, Dre," she said. "Don't worry, I'll make sure you survive your first week." Andre chuckled, grateful for her kindness. Over the next few days, Shanice proved to be an excellent mentor. She guided him through the intricacies of legal research, showed him how to navigate the firm's labyrinthine filing system, and even offered him advice on balancing work and life. What Shanice didn't realize was that Andre was observing her as much as she was mentoring him. He admired her work ethic, her resilience, and the way she treated everyone with respect, regardless of their position. For the first time in years, Andre felt a flicker of hope, a sense that perhaps love, real love, wasn't an impossible dream. But not everyone was pleased with the growing bond between Shanice and Dre. In the shadows, Kesha Morrison watched them with a mix of envy and disdain. "Who does she think she is?" Kesha muttered under her breath. "She doesn't belong here." Unaware of Kesha's brewing jealousy, Shanice continued to treat Dre with the same kindness she showed everyone. And Andre, despite his secret, found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't fully explain. Life at the Clark firm was a constant whirlwind, with high-stakes cases and sharp competition fueling the atmosphere. Shanice and Dre had settled into a routine, their growing friendship drawing more attention than they realized. Among those taking notice was Kesha Morrison, an ambitious lawyer whose polished exterior masked a deep insecurity. Kesha, the daughter of a prominent businessman, had always felt the need to prove she belonged at the top, and she wasn't about to let someone like Shanice or an intern overshadow her. One afternoon, Kesha lingered by the break room, her gaze fixed on Shanice and Dre as they worked through a stack of files. Their heads were bent close together, their conversation punctuated by laughter. "Look at them," she said to a colleague, her voice dripping with disdain. "Miss Montego Bay thinks she's running the place. And that intern? He's probably just cozying up to her because he's clueless." Her colleague, eager to stay in Kesha's good graces, nodded. "They do spend a lot of time together." Kesha's lips curled into a smirk. "Let's see how long that lasts." That evening, Shanice and Dre were assigned to prepare documents for an important presentation. The case was high profile and the stakes were enormous, a make or break moment for Shanice's career. Determined to prove herself, she stayed late, double-checking every detail. Unbeknownst to Shanice, Kesha had other plans. She waited until the office was nearly empty, then crept into the file room where Shanice had stored the case materials. With a practiced hand, she swapped several key pages, ensuring the presentation would be riddled with errors. The next morning, Shanice arrived early to review the files one last time. Dre, ever the observant intern, noticed her furrowed brow and the subtle tension in her posture. "Something wrong?" he asked. Shanice hesitated. "I don't know. Something feels off." Andre leaned over the documents, his sharp eyes scanning the pages. It didn't take long for him to spot the discrepancies. "These figures don't match the original report," he said, pointing to a section. "Someone tampered with this." Shanice's stomach dropped. Tampered? But why? Andre cut her off gently. We don't have time to figure that out right now. Let's fix this. Working side by side, they reconstructed the presentation, their determination overriding any lingering doubts. When the meeting began, Shanice delivered a flawless pitch, her confidence unwavering despite the chaos behind the scenes. As the room erupted into applause, Kesha watched from the back, her expression frozen in disbelief. Her plan had failed, and worse, she had underestimated Shanice and Dre, but the victory was bittersweet. As Dre packed up the materials, he glanced at Shanice, his heart heavy. He knew he couldn't keep his secret much longer. The events of the presentation lingered in Andre's mind for the rest of the day. Watching Shanice handle herself with poise and grace had only deepened his admiration for her, but it also made his deception weigh heavier on his conscience. It was time to tell the truth. That afternoon, as the entire office gathered for a staff meeting, Andre stood at the front of the room. He glanced at Miss Ivy, who was quietly mopping in the corner, her eyes twinkling with encouragement. Taking a deep breath, Andre began. "I need to address something important," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "For the past few weeks, I've been working here as an intern, but the truth is I'm not just an intern. My name is Andre Clark, and I'm the CEO of this firm." The room fell silent. Shock rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of disbelief. Shanice's eyes widened, her expression a mix of surprise and betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "All this time you—" Andre's gaze softened. "I wanted to see this place for what it really is," he explained. "To understand the people who work here, their struggles, their strengths. And Shanice," he paused, his voice breaking slightly, "you've shown me more than I could have ever hoped to learn." The tension in the room was palpable. Shanice looked away, her emotions swirling. She felt exposed, as if every moment they had shared had been a lie. Without another word, she turned and walked out, leaving Andre standing there, his heart sinking. After the meeting, Miss Ivy found Andre sitting in his office, his head in his hands. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said gently. "Then why does it feel like I ruined everything?" Andre replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Ivy smiled knowingly. "Give her time, Andre. She's hurt, but she's also wise. Trust that she'll see the truth." The days following Andre's revelation were tense. Shanice avoided him at every turn, focusing on her work and keeping her interactions with him strictly professional. Though she maintained her composure, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and most of all, unsure of how to reconcile the Dre she had come to trust with the Andre Clark, who had lied to her. Andre, for his part, was determined to make things right. He tried approaching Shanice in the office, but her responses were clipped and distant. Realizing he needed a new approach, he turned to the one person he knew could help. Miss Ivy found him in the garden of her estate, pacing like a man on a mission. "Grandma," he said, his voice laced with desperation, "I messed up. I need to fix this, but I don't know how." Miss Ivy gave him a measured look. "Shanice is hurt because you broke her trust," she said. "If you want to win it back, you have to show her that you're serious, that you respect her enough to be honest from now on." Andre nodded, taking her words to heart. That evening, he sat down and wrote a heartfelt letter to Shanice, pouring out his feelings and explaining his actions. He apologized for deceiving her, admitted his fears about being judged for his wealth, and confessed how much she meant to him. He left the letter on her desk with a single hibiscus flower, a subtle nod to her roots in Montego Bay. When Shanice found the letter the next morning, she hesitated to open it. Part of her wanted to toss it aside, but curiosity and a lingering affection for Andre got the better of her. As she read his words, her resolve softened. She still felt hurt, but she couldn't deny the sincerity in his apology. Later that day, Miss Ivy approached Shanice in the hallway. "You remind me of myself when I was young," Ivy said, her tone warm. "I was stubborn too, didn't let anyone in easily, but life is too short to hold on to anger. Sometimes the people who hurt us are the ones most worth forgiving." Shanice sighed, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "I don't know if I can trust him again." Miss Ivy smiled. "Trust isn't given, it's earned. Let him try." Andre knew he needed to do more than write a letter to win back Shanice's trust. He wanted to show her that he valued her for who she was, not just as a lawyer, but as the strong, resilient woman who had inspired him from the moment they met. He decided to plan something special, something that would speak to her heart. With the help of Miss Ivy and his assistant, Andre arranged a private dinner at a villa overlooking the crystal clear waters of Montego Bay. He had the terrace decorated with twinkling lights and the table set with Shanice's favorite foods: jerk chicken, festival, steamed fish, and fresh coconut water. When Shanice arrived, she was taken aback by the effort he had put into the evening. Andre greeted her with a nervous smile, his usually confident demeanor replaced with vulnerability. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. As they sat under the stars, Andre opened up in a way he never had before. "Shanice, I've spent my whole life wondering if anyone could see past my name, past my money," he began. "But you did. You saw me, Dre, the intern, and that meant everything to me." Shanice listened quietly, her heart softening with each word. "I know I made mistakes," Andre continued, "but I love you, Shanice. I'll spend my life proving it if you'll let me." Tears welled in Shanice's eyes as she looked at him, seeing not the CEO of the Clark firm, but the man she had come to care for. "I love you too, Andre," she said, her voice trembling. "But trust takes time. I need to know that this isn't just words." Andre nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll show you," he promised. "Every day, in every way, I'll show you." The evening ended with a slow walk along the beach, their hands brushing as they talked. For the first time in weeks, Shanice felt the weight of her doubts begin to lift. And as Andre walked her to her car, she allowed herself to hope that their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Months passed, and as Andre promised, he showed Shanice every day that his love for her was real. From small gestures, like remembering her favorite coffee order, to grander acts, such as ensuring the firm implemented programs to support young lawyers from disadvantaged backgrounds. He proved his dedication not just to her, but to the values she held dear. Their relationship grew stronger with time, and one sunny afternoon, Andre took Shanice on a surprise trip to Montego Bay. They visited her childhood neighborhood, the place that had shaped her strength and determination. As they walked along the beach, where she had often come to dream of a brighter future, Andre stopped, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Shanice," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "you've taught me what it means to love, to trust, and to hope. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Shanice's face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding, held months later in Ocho Rios, was a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings. The ceremony took place on a cliffside overlooking the turquoise Caribbean Sea, with lush greenery and vibrant flowers framing the scene. Shanice glowed in an elegant lace gown, her natural curls adorned with tiny blossoms. Andre, dashing in a tailored white suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. The guest list included family, close friends, and colleagues, those who had supported their journey. Miss Ivy, radiant in a deep emerald dress, sat proudly in the front row, her eyes twinkling with joy. During her speech at the reception, she raised her glass and said, "I've watched this family grow through challenges and triumphs, but today I can say we are truly blessed. Andre and Shanice, may your love continue to inspire us all." The reception was a lively affair, with the sounds of reggae and soca filling the air. Guests danced beneath the stars, feasting on a spread of Jamaican delicacies from curry goat to ackee and saltfish. Shanice and Andre's first dance as husband and wife was to the tune of "Turn Your Lights Down Low" by Bob Marley, a moment so tender it brought tears to everyone's eyes. Miss Ivy, never one to miss a chance to tease, approached the couple during the cake cutting. "Now, don't waste time," she said with a sly grin. "I want to see great-grandchildren before I'm too old to spoil them." Laughter filled the room, and Andre and Shanice exchanged a glance, their smiles full of promise. Life after the wedding was a blend of joy and purpose. Shanice and Andre quickly became known as a power couple, not just because of their professional success, but because of the genuine partnership they shared. Together, they implemented changes at the Clark firm, creating mentorship programs for aspiring lawyers and advocating for diversity and inclusion in the legal field. The employees who had once mocked Shanice now treated her with respect and admiration, inspired by her journey and her grace. Even Kesha, after being dismissed from the firm, reached out to apologize. Though Shanice accepted the apology, she remained cautious, choosing to focus her energy on the positive changes in her life. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their Kingston home, Shanice turned to Andre with a shy smile. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." Andre, sensing the significance of her tone, set down his glass of wine and took her hand. "What is it?" Shanice hesitated, her eyes glistening. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Andre was speechless, his emotions swirling. Then, a wide grin spread across his face as he pulled her into a tight embrace. "We're going to be parents," he whispered, his voice thick with joy. When they shared the news with Miss Ivy, the matriarch clapped her hands and laughed so hard she had to sit down. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "This family is truly blessed. Now tell me, boy or girl, I need to start knitting." Months later, as they welcomed their baby, a beautiful girl named Isla, their hearts were fuller than they had ever imagined. Holding her tiny hand, Andre and Shanice knew they had come full circle, their love stronger and more enduring than ever. Miss Ivy, cradling Isla in her arms, smiled at the couple. "This," she said, her voice soft, "is what happens when love is built on trust, honesty, and faith. You've built something unbreakable." And as the Clark family gathered around, celebrating the newest member of their legacy, Andre and Shanice knew that their journey was far from over. It was only just beginning, the end. Thanks for listening.